There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. We'll be getting started in a few minutes, but I am going to do a reminder that our students in the 7th and 8th grade chorus should not have any cell phones on them or with them. So all cell phones are supposed to be left with your parents. That is a part of your grade for tonight. So all cell phones need to be taken to your parental units. If you have gum, make sure they go away. So I've been told that there were lots of cell phones being seen up there. So let's move those to somebody else in the building now. Thank you.
You feeling better?
I was at Playful Warning one time. It takes a long time. So if y'all want to practice, you don't need to practice.
At home, not while we're singing. Are you staying up here with us now?
Good evening, I'm Paul Flowers. I'm the chorus teacher at Hope Middle School. Thank you for coming tonight. Looking forward to having our program with you. We're going to do some interesting things for you tonight because one of the things that I was going to try was many times people think when we come to a chorus class or whatever, they must just do lots of fun singing the whole time. So I was going to try to tonight give you a little insight into what happens inside of our classroom a little bit, and we're going to show you some of the things that we've been learning along the way. So one of the things that we learn is that our instrument, unlike band and orchestra, which have an external instrument, is our body. And so one of the things that we work towards is relaxing and getting our body ready for the best singing it can possibly be. So one of the things we do is we start with some stretches, right? We're actually going to show them a couple of stretches, all right? We're not going to talk. Stretch tall. So after we do our stretches, we kind of place our body, plant it, feet, hands, head, and then because we have to articulate words and enunciate text, which is also different from orchestra and band and piano and those other things, we actually do our face. And so this is where I get to see who the shy ones are and who aren't. So we do what we call Mr. Flowers' grumpy face. Go. And then after I've had my first pot of coffee, and then grumpy face. And one more pot of coffee. Because I do have 2 a day. And grumpy. But they're the small pots. Feet, hands. The other thing that we learn in the beginning of the year is that we can't make a decent sound that anyone can hear if we don't open our mouth. And kids are often scared to open their mouth. Plus we're in the South, where we barely move our mouth when we talk. So we learn about our ah space. So put your hands up in your ah space. Say, oh! Put your hands in a flat space. Go. See that country sound? We don't do that anymore. Oh! And then we take a big belly breath and siren. Go. All right, and my colleagues in the school have gotten really used to just hearing that same strange sound 6 times a day. All right, now, so that's one of the things that we do. Then another thing that we spend time doing is learning how to read music, and we use different tools. Again, unlike an orchestra or band, where if you have a trumpet, you learn to blow air a specific way, and you press a valve, and the pitch comes out. You memorize what it is. We don't have that. Ours, we have to use tools of solfege and using our hand signs, because singing is educated guessing, kind of guessing along the way. So we use these tools along our body to help remind us or engage our brain into finding the pitches. So we start by learning our scales. All right, feet, hands. With notes on the page, and then we start moving them around along the way, and we build upon that. But we also use this scale to start learning how to harmonize. This half. So after we learn some of those scales, the month of October comes, and that's a great time to learn minor scales. So we start by learning, I kind of sneak it in on them, some warm-ups along the way that are in minor before we even learn the minor scales. So let's show them. Have you seen the ghost?
Have you seen the ghost of Tom? Long white bones with the rest all gone. Ooh, wouldn't it be chilly with no skin on? Have you seen the ghost of Tom? Have you seen the rest all gone? Long white bones with the rest all gone. Wouldn't it be chilly with no skin on? Wouldn't it be chilly with no skin on?
Good. So we're practicing those harmony skills. And then eventually we'll learn the scales that go along with that. So that's a little insight into what we learn and what we start in 6th grade. I'll show a little bit more demonstrations with our 7th and 8th grade chorus, a little bit more advanced in our harmonies and things like that. So I'd like to introduce Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson, Fran Wilson, is our accompanist. She is... Mrs. Wilson has been with us since Hope opened 14 years ago. She's been to every concert and every competition except for one when she had to play for a wedding, and my wife stepped in and filled in for her several years ago. But she's been to all of our Disney things. She rides all the roller coasters with me. She's my roller coaster buddy. So anyway, we're glad to have Mrs. Wilson with us. And so we're going to begin our concert today with a piece called The Path to the Moon. You see, one of the skills that we learned in that, or we kind of moved along that awe space that we talked about at the very beginning, was very evident in many of the words in that piece, which allowed us to resonate those sounds better, for it easier to hear, for you to hear. All right, so the next piece that we're going to do is called a twist of the tongue. So we've been talking about enunciating words a little bit, and jokingly, I tell the kids, we need to do more exaggeration when we're performing for our audience, so our words can be understood by the audience. So I tell them to pretend like you're at the stoplight, and a car pulls up next to you, and that mama in the car next to you is mad at those kids, and she is just letting them have it. She's just going, And so we've been practicing exaggerating our mouths in a way that looks like we can really understand those words. Now hopefully we will sing in an unangry way though. So at this time, we are going to transition in between our 6th grade chorus into our 7th and 8th grade chorus. And so they are going to move this way, and we can have a little moment of relaxation. All right? Yes. Okay, so this is our 7th and 8th grade chorus, and today at, let's say, 2 o'clock was the first time that this group has all sung together for the first time. They actually meet in 4 separate classes and learn some of the same music and then come together for a concert. So surprisingly, it works out pretty well. It sounds pretty good when we put it all together. This is their first time, and then we get to do it a few more times in the spring, and you'll hear that it slowly improves along the way, which is a pretty neat thing to have. So this group we're going to demonstrate a little bit different. You hear their sounds a little bit different. One of the first things that we learn in chorus is that if we all have to shape our mouths the same way. There are 5 basic vowel sounds that we use for singing, and then sometimes you combine them to create more, but those 5 basic vowel sounds are E, E, A, O, and U, which are Latin sounds. So we learn if we all shape our mouth the same way, it magically comes in tune somehow. And so if we do that and we combine really good listening ears, it works. So if you guys would sing E, E, O, but use your hand signs. And go. Difference. The O was a little bit better, it was less country, and a little bit more what we were looking for. Again, we also learned about the minor scales, and so we're going to demonstrate the harmonic minor scale. Do and Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Si, Do, Do, Si, Re, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Do. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Do. Do, Sol, Fa, Sol, Mi, Sol, Re, Sol, Do, Sol, Fa, Sol, Mi, Re, Do. Do, Sol, Fa, harmonies and we stop on different notes and then we resolve the chord, we create some things like that. So we're ear training along the way. So that's a fairly sophisticated skill to have as a 7th and 8th grader, that ear training. So that helps us when we learn our music, we can hone in on those harmonies and chords a little bit better. So we're going to begin our concert now with a piece called A Jubilant Glory, which is supposed to be happy. Let's hope their faces look that way. Performer's etiquette is another thing we learned. We don't talk on stage. It detracts from our performance and makes us look sloppy and unprofessional, so we don't want to do that. We are very lucky this year and the last few years that we've had lots of young men join our choral program, and it's a privilege for us to have that because not very many choral programs have that in the state of North Carolina, where you might see, like here, we've probably got 100 or, about 90, 85, 90 girls, and then we've got all these boys. You might see most programs have, 85, 90 girls and 3 boys. And so it's kind of hard to balance music parts that way without that, but they're doing a really good job hanging on. Their voices are in the midst of a change right now. Some of them, like one of them started in 6th grade. He came in the first day and said, "Hello, Mr. Flowers." Whereas most of them are still just embarking on their voice change, and some even hadn't started. So we have this gamut of sounds coming from the boys. And so I always tell them, no matter what happens in class, this is one of the reasons in 7th grade, I like to separate the boys from the girls because they have a tendency during that 7th grade year to get a little ashamed of their voice, and especially if they have any cracks in their sound. So it's nice when we separate them so that if their voice cracks, they really don't have anyone that they're trying to impress other than themselves. So they're a little bit more uninhibited and allow themselves to sing. So I tell them, if you sing through your voice change, you're going to end up with a stronger voice and pretty sooner than later, and not be scared to sing. The funny thing is, every boy is different, and some days a child might have a low range for 4 or 5 notes one day, and the very next day that's not there at all, and they're singing "Why again" like they were in 4th grade, and it's okay. So I'd like to, last few years I've started giving the gentlemen some of their own pieces to feature.